when you wake up, you send a ripple effect all through the various levels of the game that allow others to remember that that's what they're supposed to do. It's a mass awakening for a reason. And I know that we are perfectly right on schedule for significant changes planet-wise in the next 2-3 years.
What determines that choice of either going to that next fifth dimensional reality or staying back once that explosion or split happens?
There is nobody that's supposed to be on the sidelines, okay? The idea is that you have to step into this frequency of awareness. It doesn't take much, okay? Look at all the great teachers. All the great teachers taught us to remember the simplicity of what? That we never forgot who we were.
Franco Romero, welcome back on Just Tap In, brother.
What is up, Emilio? What's going on? Man,
it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. I was about to start looking at milk cartons to see if I could find you, because that's how long it's been. So good to see you, brother. Good to see you. Thank you for having me back.
You. Of course. And just as we always start, I'm really curious to know, what are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Is this how we always start out?
Always.
All right. Globally, it's probably stuff that most people can feel but don't really see right now. What most people are seeing right now, for the most part, Emilio, is sort of the surface level chaos that comes along with a transformation like this. What gets me excited, as you know, because you and I talk a bit, and you know what I kind of do on my days off. I go roaming around and activating grids and whatnot, is that I'm seeing the fruition of a lot of the things that have been talked about throughout various times and in different ways, whether it be astrology or mysticism or this or that. I'm starting to see it really coming together in a way that maybe on the planet's surface people don't really see it yet. But there is a sense now, right? You interview so many people. There's a sense from most people that this is now the time. They don't know exactly how it unfolds, but that is exciting, Emilio, because a lot of people have been waiting for this. They may not have known how to even speak that, but they're waiting for this. The thing now that we have to do is we have to interpret it properly. We have to know, what is it exactly that's here, right? And how do we get involved in it? What's our role in all of this? But that will come here soon. For now, it's just exciting to see it. Some of the adventures that I get myself into, and and it's, every time I get in an adventure, my hair gets even curlier and curlier and longer. So, it gets crazy out there. But it's a good crazy. It's a great crazy. It's a mystical crazy. And it's a freedom kind of crazy. Again, it doesn't feel that way just yet. There's still a lot of that surface level stuff. But if you ask most people, they know something's happening. They're not sure what it is, and maybe some of them are afraid, but they know something's happening. And 2 years ago, you probably get very few people that were willing to say that this is the time now, that we're in it now, without making it sound like a doomsdayer sort of speech. You know what I mean? No, it doesn't feel that way. I'm sure there are pieces to that people can freak out. I mean, you were a part of you traveling back and forth from where you live in Colombia and then in Spain, and you got to see a whole grid system go down, and people feeling like this was like the end, because it wasn't just a city, it was a country, several countries, and you get these people that start to allow themselves to bring all that energy out and go, is this really it? Everybody that's talking, this is it. You know, the 3 days of darkness and all that. It's there now, Emilio. It's in the mainstream of the ones who are supposed to be carrying the consciousness through the planet. It's there. And that's exciting. That's really, really exciting, because despite what maybe others might be telling in terms of the story, I know that this is falling in line perfectly with how this whole activation, ascension, awakening, remembrance process is supposed to go. And I know that we are perfectly right on schedule for significant changes planet-wise in the next 2-3 years, 6-7 years at the latest. And these aren't just little changes. These are event changes that will change everything. And I know that you've interviewed plenty of people who say, this is it. Okay, let's go. They better not be saying let's go, because that's my thing. Okay. But
I'll make sure that that's branded. No,
that's branded.
That's our thing.
Yeah, it's our thing. I've got my legal people. You got your legal people working on it, right? Let's go. Okay. But no, in all seriousness, it's exciting. I mean, I've shared with you a lot of what the people, the students and others that have taken the leap of faith and stepped into their truth, and what they're doing around the world. It's like fantasy meets this world. It's like you can see your purpose now more clearly, that you're not just an observer of what's happening, but that you actually have a purpose for being here. And a lot of the people that are listening to this right now are still trying to find that purpose, are still trying to figure it all out. And they will. The beauty is they will. They're not going to just be on the sidelines. I mean, I believe I've told you this before, but you're not here to be on the sidelines. And I don't care who you are. That doesn't matter. Okay, as these energies rise and you become more aware of the difference that is happening within you, you start to get callings and stuff. You start to see the potential of what you already are, and that potential is absolutely mind-blowing and heart-blowing and every other kind of blowing, because I get to see it every day. I get to experience it with the people that again took the chance to explore that other side of them, that calling, that voice that told them you are something more than what you believe and other people have told you that you are. You came here to change an entire planet of consciousness. And that's only something you see in the movies. So that's what I see globally. Now, again, you could make a strong argument, dude, I don't know what planet you are on right now, because this is what's happening. You've got all sorts of things that are happening on the surface. But if you know how this plays, if you understand, even in basic 3D language, that all that happens on, say, your body, what happens to your body, the illnesses that you get to your body, emotional or physical, are the last things that happen, because inwardly your body is going through a massive, say, change of turmoil energy. This is now, I'm talking like, 3D medical stuff here, okay? Now you take that out into consciousness on the planet, and you're going to see that on the planet, it's the same thing. There's all this chaos, because all this chaos is coming to the surface as this whole new energy is coming in. And this is the real deal. I mean, I've been saying this, since the first time we talked. This is it. This is it. And your choice is whether you want to be a part of that movement of evolution of consciousness or not. And fortunately, I believe most of the people that are listening to this conversation, they're ready for it. They're sitting there going, I get it. I feel it. It's coursing through my body. I don't know what it is. But I know something. I know I'm here to do something. And I don't feel that it's going to take very much longer for them to feel that. You see it in your stuff, your travels. You just know that this baby is ready to blow in a good way. So that's personally, it's basically take what I just said and know that every single day, and this wasn't the case for me years ago. I even showed you off camera some pictures of the life that I was. I was just living life, barely. Okay, and it changes. It changes everything. It's so cool to wake up and know that your life is magical. Doesn't mean that it's not presented with 3D challenges, but when you can see the stuff that I've been seeing in terms of the miracle-like things that people are going through that 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago, they had no idea that they could do. It's incredible. It's just incredible. It makes you believe in all sorts of things, from the Tooth Fairy to Santa Claus to everything in between. And don't tell me they don't exist, because I do believe it. So thank you very much. Okay. So ideally that's what I answer your question. It's an amazing time to be alive right now.
Yeah.
I know that may not seem that way to a lot of people who are listening to us right now, but it's literally right there if you're willing to take a leap of faith. It's right there. So, oof. All right. Let's go. Next thing. What are we going to talk about?
In there, you brought up what you called the 3 days of darkness. And that's something that has been, spoken upon in different avenues in the spiritual community. The way I heard you describe it is that it's a detachment as a consciousness from the third dimension or the third density. I would love to go even deeper into describing really not just the metaphorical aspects of that statement, but really what's going on a deeper level there. Yeah.
Okay. So, like you, I've heard all sorts of different explanations, and there's some coherence in all of them. Okay. But, and I'm not trying to take this away from anybody who's had their own explanation of this. Okay. Because they could do the same thing for what I'm going to say. If you're looking at the 3 days of darkness, metaphorically speaking, you start getting all these people that'll say, well, this is a time of reflection, and you go, it's time for you to let go of certain things and start, certain things. When you hear that, you're getting a 3D filter type of explanation, okay? The 3 days of darkness is actually related to a physics phenomenon. Okay, it's not even a phenomenon. It's an actualness of whatever you want to call it, a physics truth. All right, this doesn't even have anything to do with spirituality. All right, if you look at the periodic table of elements, okay, which I'm sure you do every day that you get up and you read
right
through.
In the morning. It's the first thing I see.
I'm sure, because it's one of those must read every day. All right, so you can have light discussion with people when you're interviewing them. But when you look at the periodic table of elements, the last couple of elements are elements that have to do with man-made, human-made phenomenon or actions, okay? And what they are is they have to do with the splitting of atoms, okay? And so we all know pretty much that from a history standpoint that the atomic bomb, for instance, was the atomic bomb because they knew how to split an atom, okay? Just an atom could create a devastation that we saw in those times, okay? But when you were looking at it from a universal perspective, and you were looking at not one particular atom, okay? There are a gabillion atoms in this reality, or this thing we call reality. But when you're looking at it from the size of a planet, and when it splits, okay, not in the physical sense, but it energetically splits, like you just beautifully said, from a consciousness perspective, when it splits off and it detaches completely. Now, when it detaches, there will be a ripple effect that will cause all sorts of noticeable changes in wavelengths and frequency and Schumann resonances, and all sorts of things get affected by it. Okay, but when that split occurs, and let's say this is the Earth, okay, and you're looking at it really from a consciousness level, okay, because consciousness is what creates reality. All right, okay. Reality is an illusion. Just let me put that in there, okay, because I want to make sure that that's also understood. That when that planet consciously starts to split open. It splits open like this. Okay, it's not like a straight up thing. It's a splitting open like this. Okay, and what happens is that it's held together by tethers. Okay, now there's all sorts of theories and science behind this. So this isn't just me giving you a, a lecture on physics that doesn't exist somewhere. You could probably look this up somewhere. Okay, but the tethers are in the way that's described from a physics standpoint, is what's keeping these two bodies of energy from splitting completely. They're held by strings, okay, of energy. Okay, now I'm not going to bore people here because there is a real true connection to this 3 days of darkness here, so I'm going to get to it right now, okay? Those tethers are not just your ordinary little strings that are keeping these two worlds balancing or bouncing around together, okay? Which is where you get phenomenon such as the Mandela effect, okay? Okay, you get those phenomenons because your consciousness is sort of teetering between two worlds that are splitting, okay? But when those tethers start to break, okay? Now those tethers, I'm going to give you a little description of what I sort of talk about in other forums or in courses and stuff, is that the Earth is 3D. The one that we exist in right now is in a 3D consciousness frequency. Then there's the 5D that everybody talks about, but nobody really talks about the 4D. And maybe we talked about it, but I'm giving you the illustration now that the tethers represent 4D. Okay, they're not metaphor. It's not metaphorical here, okay? They're an energy stream. They're like a tunnel, or like a funnel, okay? And this is very common if you talk to people, in a sense that because if you want to talk to a physicist, a nuclear physicist or an astrophysicist, if you're just kind of boring and not boring. No, I didn't mean they're boring, but if you're bored, you could talk to them. Talk your ears off. I'm sure about this, but these are not things that are theoretical. They're what's being discussed right now in terms of free energy and things of that nature, okay? The connection between 3 and 5 is held by this energy, this funnel energy. It's like a portal that is 4D. It's 4D, okay? Which is what's 4D. 4D, because nobody talks about 4D, is awareness. It's an energy of awareness, okay? It's a consciousness of awareness. And so people go, so what? Okay, and here's Franco going all over the place again. But this is a big puzzle, okay? You got to put it all together. 4D awareness is equivalent to the awareness that created the beginning of everything at the beginning of time, meaning that before there was consciousness, there was energy. And what made energy consciousness was awareness, okay? And it spins at a different frequency, and that same frequency at a lower level is 4D. 4D is not the only, there's a bunch of other levels of awarenesses, but 4D, there's also the consciousness energy, which is 5D and 6D and 7D. But 4D is the awareness. When those tethers start to break, okay, they create all sorts of really heavy, intense periods in the 3D realm, which is why if you've looked at, the last year and a half, you have all sorts of, if you're talking to astrologers and others, okay, but you don't even have to talk to them. You feel it, you hear it, you can sense it. You got days that are just really heavy, and you got all sorts of other things that are going on, biologically and emotionally speaking, and even scientifically speaking, with disturbances in the grid system and the Schumann resonance and all sorts of things. When those start to pop, okay, they create these seismic energetic explosions. That's the only way I can call it. When the last one pops, which I've been saying this since the beginning, when the last one pops, that baby is the one, okay? That's where the two atoms, if you will, break off completely, okay? And again, going back to basic science, when two atoms split completely, you have the force of energy that you saw in those bombs. But when we're talking about a planet, it will cause such a powerful explosion in the cosmic sense that it will create a light effect, a bright, bright powerful light effect that people will assume is coming from the sun, but it's not. It's coming from a higher level of consciousness. And it will literally be like somebody just blew a flashlight in your face. It won't hurt. It'll just be like, and then it'll stop and it'll come back. And when it comes back in, that's the explosion outwardly. When it comes back in, everything will go, in a sense, dark for 3 days. What the darkness really represents, and it's not metaphorical, is the time period where we feel like we have slept for 3 days. In that time period, linearly speaking, okay, that's where humanity will shift out of 3D into 5D. For those who are shifting into 5D, for those who will ascend into 5D, it will feel like you just went to sleep and then you woke up and you will be in 5D. For those who stay back, it will still be darkness in the sleeping way, but when you wake up, you will realize you have missed 3 days and the world is in pretty bad shape, if it isn't already. Okay? That's it. That's what it is. And that is very, for the lack of better words, that's real. That is real. That is going to happen.
What determines that choice of either going to that next fifth dimensional reality or staying back once that explosion or split happens?
Well, we kind of talked about this before, but I want to bring it into what I just said at the beginning. You're not here to be an observer, okay? If you feel, and I know there are people that are going to probably say something in the comment section about this, but I'm just the messenger here, okay? And there is nobody that's supposed to be on the sidelines, okay? The idea is that you have to step into this frequency of awareness. It doesn't take much, okay? It means to kind of go against the grain with everything that you've been taught to believe, right? And you start feeling into your intuition and you start going, the stuff that everybody talks about, go in and remember who you are. They don't talk about the remembering part as much, but go in and they start to listen to a higher voice, their own higher voice as they go forward. Because if you don't listen to it and you resist it, you'll stay in 3D. It's really plain and simple. You have to step into, you and I kind of talked about this on a different subject before we got on. You have free will. That's your free will. Okay. That's your free will, where you can choose to stay and be caught up in the minutia of 3D. And I mean that in various different levels. Okay. I talk about this and teach about this, that there are different levels of awarenesses. And one of the last levels, believe it or not, of a heightened aware consciousness is a thing called the delusional stage. Okay. And what is the delusional stage? I mean, you kind of would imagine that would be sort of in the beginning of these 4 steps, but no, it's one of the last ones. Because what you're not here to do, believe it or not, is you're not here to absorb all of this information and then decide that my purpose here is to save the world. Okay. Or my purpose here is to get people to see this amazing way of which I now experience this reality. I got to get them to wake up. Okay. Although that's very admirable and maybe in some way you will do something along those lines. The most important thing that you have to do is wake up yourself. And people will say, well, I am awake. I know that I want to change. I'm doing this. I'm meditating. I'm doing this, this and that. It's not about doing. It's about accepting that you don't have to do anything but accept that you are divinity. And if you feel that I'm just blowing smoke, okay, look at all the great teachers. All the great teachers taught us to remember the simplicity of what? That we never forgot who we were. We were just shown by others that we are not. Okay. And if you could just take that, in the first book I wrote, The Closet Spiritualist, I have a subheading. Nobody reads it. I mean, hopefully people read the book, but nobody reads the subheading. Okay. And it says, waking up to your truth is going to be the hardest thing you will ever do. Why? Because if it hasn't been beaten into you that you are nothing already, If that hasn't been enough, then when you have the audacity to actually believe that you can do something, that you actually can be very mystical, that you actually can actually have seismic changing effects on people that have nothing to do with 3D, but it's all mystical, all alchemistic, it's all what you've seen other people do. If you can get to that point, okay, and know that, then you're going to doubt yourself. You'll have 150 million reasons why you can't do it, why it's not in it for you. And there's a lot of trauma and drama throughout your life that you'll go back to and you'll say, I gotta work on this because this really screwed me up. But that's how the game plays. That's how this simulation works. If you want to ascend, and most of those who came here in this Earth School are here to ascend. It's not about trying to drop people out, seeing how challenging your life can be and will only take the best 5%. No, it's the other way around. 99% of those who are here in this Earth School to go through that process will ascend. But they cannot sit there and expect that just because the 5D, 4D energy is now here, they could sit back and say, well, I made it. I'm in the party now. Let's go. Okay, you can't do that. You got to do what all the other ones did before you, the ones who broke through the veil. You have to not only accept who you are, but prove to yourself that you can do it. Because as in music, there is the law of resonance. And the law of resonance says that two things cannot come together if they're not in resonance with each other. They can't vibrate at the same frequency. If you're in 5D and you're down here at 3D, and 5D is that breaking place, the one of the Ascension, you're down here going, yeah, I'm ready, okay, I'm here. It's just going to pass you up. You got to come into your truth. This is now the time where you have to accept, even if you have to pretend. That's not faking or making, okay? But you have to at least be a child and pretend that you actually are here to change the world by changing yourself. Because the moment you do that, then the game is over. Because I talk about that the game is a dream state game. Okay? Others have probably talked about this too. What happens when you're dreaming? Once you realize that you were dreaming and you could be lucid enough to do something about the dream, which is what we're doing here by the awakening process, you get out of the dream. You wake up. You purposely wake up. And what happens to all that stuff that is happening in the dream? All the people that you know in that dream, what happens to them? Even you might have the greatest relationship with them in the dream. You might have felt the pain and the happiness and all that in the dream. But the moment you wake up, you go, oh, damn, this was just a crazy dream. That's how it works. I'm not kidding you. That is how it works. And if you don't really trust that, talk to a near-death experiencer and ask them how they felt when they, because you know that I had a near-death experience, but talk to others and ask them, what was it like when you realized that you were just in a dream, a play, in a game? And they'll tell you the exact same thing. How can tens of thousands of people be wrong about that? They're not. That's what happens when you realize that you're in a dream. It ends. Just like that. The game ends. That's what I got for you, brother. Hopefully that answered it for you.
Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. This is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode. Yeah. And I've heard you also say before that this is a scavenger hunt. And when you were able to go back and travel into those angelic realms, you know, when you went through your experiences, and even when you're in meditation, wherever,
Yeah.
what do you realize about what we left behind for ourselves? Maybe some clues or riddles or mysteries that will help us remember that we're here for this shift and we are prepared and we have enough tools to go through it.
You know, that's what I like about you, brother, is that you actually have some real cool questions to ask. You know, nobody's really ever asked me before. Okay. One of the biggest things that makes this fun, okay, it depends on who you're talking to. Some people don't particularly care for this game and they don't feel it's fun. But one of the things that I saw this in what I was doing with the transmissions and the channeling that I was doing, and then now how I play through this game, is that I look for clues everywhere. But if you don't know how to look for those clues, and keep in mind something, Emilio, the more that you allow yourself to accept higher frequencies, and I'm not telling people they got to sit there, meditate for 5 hours or change lifestyles drastically. I'm telling you, just accept the possibility that you are who you are, because the only other time you're going to get that real clear message is when you're physically dead, and by that time it's too late. Okay. But if you could just play with this, okay, the clues will start to present themselves to you. I always tell people, like those that are either doing the coursework with me or other students that are doing other courses, read the material that you just read a few months ago. Read it over again. If you are in rising in frequency, I guarantee you that you will read that material again and it will tell you something differently more than once. Because if these books, and many of them are, whether the authors knew or not, these books are written in codes, okay? Coding, the language of symbols, which is sacred geometry, is also what creates alphabetical letters, okay? All right? And those alphabetical letters have what's called thought form, which is our profound, concentrated energy of consciousness. You could equate it to like a zip file, okay? And when that zip file is opened, because your frequency is rising, you're going to see messages in the same book or the same material or the same movie or the same song that weren't there before. They just weren't there. Okay. I've talked about it. I just briefly mentioned the Mandela effect. That started in 2009 when by coincidence or not, 4D energies were coming in, and by coincidence or not was the time period that we were all talking about back then, about the end of time because of the Mayan calendar and stuff like that. There was a lot of things that were actually correct about that, and one of them was the higher elevation of consciousness that humanity was about to step into from a frequency standpoint that caused these distortions in the timeline, the time-space or space-time continuum. So you'd have multiple different stories about the same event. Okay, that is what the Mandela effect is, that it's starting to show the variation between two worlds and how those two worlds can be floating next to each other and creating relatively similar situations but different outcomes. Okay, and so that's another kind of a clue. But most of the clues that I'm talking about, and this is something that most people don't really ever consider, is that we live in a world based on contrast, right? I mean, you talk to any spiritual person, most of them will say, yeah, this is a world of contrast. Well, what does that mean? Well, this is the world where you get to experience what you are not. Well, what does that mean? Well, like whatever you are over there is what you're not here, okay? And that's if you get somebody who actually can get that far, okay? Most of the time, people don't really know what that means. Because if you really feel into it, most of the time we're told that we're insignificant, okay? So if we're in the world of contrast and we're playing a game or an experience that we are not, then what does that mean? If we're already insignificant, then what does that mean? It means that, well, different ways of looking at it, but maybe it means that if you look deep enough, you're going to find that the contrast is that you remember what you really are within the world that you believe is telling you that you are not, okay? And even if you are looking at clues, and I mean, they're all over the place, okay? I'll give you an example here in a moment, but if you look at anything that tells you, what the perception of reality is to you relative to, and it doesn't have to be spiritual, but relative to your purpose on this, in this game or earth or life, the nature of this reality, what is it that you're supposed to, what's your relationship with the divine? When you look at all of that, if you look at it from the contrasting opinion, okay, you will more than likely find that the truth lies there. When people feel into contrast, now this took a long time, so everybody was listening here, this took me like 10 years to figure this out, okay? So you're getting it here in 10 minutes, all right? All right? The reason why a lot of what we're taught to believe doesn't make sense is because it doesn't make sense. Okay, growing up, you get taught all of these things about what God is and how it separates, you know, the good and the bad and the this and the that. I mean, there's just so much contrast, all right, that doesn't make sense. 2 and 2 is meant to be 8 and you're like forced to believe it, okay? But what if, like the very most fundamental principle is that God is separate from you and you are separate from it, okay? Okay, what's the opposite of that? What's the opposite of God is separate from you and that you are separate from it? You are God.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am. You are the I am. All right? Now, we can go into like a whole 10 shows on this, but I'm telling you, you have to be a detective. You have to sit there, and if something doesn't feel right, it doesn't make sense to you, and you look at it, and there's plenty of stuff out there that doesn't make sense to you, then look at the opposite of what is being shown to you, and you will find the clue as to what you're supposed to remember. Okay? You do this 99.999% of the time, it will blow your mind. It will blow your mind.
Do you have an example of one of those moments that happened with you?
Well, that one for one, that God is, that I am God, you are God, and that there is no difference between us and this thing called God. But I'll give you another example. This one's a pretty easy one too, but there's a ton of them. Okay, I mean they're all over the place. But okay, describe for me. I'm gonna give you a sentence. No, okay, let's play this game. Okay, we're gonna play a game here, right? I'm gonna tell you a sentence, all right? And you're going to decipher it for me, all right? And anybody in the audience could do this too, okay? Anybody that's listening, all right? I'm going to say, and this, I'm going to preface this by saying that this is not a knock on meditation. I'm just giving you an example of something, okay? So the idea with meditation is a good one. There's a lot of great things you could do with it, okay? But I will tell you that when it comes to at least the remembrance of who you are, it is not the easiest way to do this, okay? But there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of millions, tens of millions of people that do it every day, okay? So I'm going to give you a sentence, and you're going to tell me 3 things about this sentence that don't make sense, okay? Okay, here we go. Are you ready? All right,
I'm ready.
He's ready.
Let's do it.
He's ready.
Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, let's go. Emilio, hey, bud, you know what? I love meditating. I love meditating, all right? Because when I do, it allows me to go into the stillness and still my mind. Yeah, you go, yeah, brother, I agree with you. Yeah, let's do that. What's wrong? What is inherently wrong? There are 3 things that are inherently wrong with that sentence. Do you know what they are?
That the mind, how could you love something if you're in stillness?
You're getting way too Buddha-like on me right now, brother. Let's tone it down here, okay? Let's tone it down, all right? I'm gonna go back and just listen to that part again, because I'm like, my brain just shattered right there, okay? Okay. All right, sorry, you're not supposed to be laughing because you got a cracked rib, but we'll keep it simple. Okay, can we try this again? Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's get simple here, okay?
That's what happens when you put me on the spot like that. We just
All right, Emilio. I love meditating because when I meditate, it allows me to go into the stillness and still my mind. Everybody who's listening to this is a really good example of how you should be looking at your life day in and day out. Okay? Especially with things that have been told that you are when you're really not. Can you give me, Emilio, at least one of the 3 things in that sentence? And some people have actually found 4 or 5 things that are inherently misleading about that sentence. But give me one.
Yeah, well,
I know that this is...
I think it's, in my personal view, it's impossible to still the mind.
Bam, bam, bam. Emilio. Ding, 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 ding. Okay? Ding, 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 ding. By the way, you did not only get not only did you get one of the 3, you got the one that was the most difficult to get. Okay? So good for you. Okay, after you got out of your Zen Buddha stuff, you actually started to feel into this like a little kid. Okay, it is.
Can you still love when you're in stillness?
Yes, you can still love, Amelia. You can go to sleep now knowing that you can still love in stillness. All right, but but what is this all about? You wanted an example of this, but this is a really powerful point I'm making, not just contrast point, but actually about the stillness, because people have no idea what the hell stillness is really about. Okay, but if the mind cannot be still, okay, therefore then the stillness is either going to be a place of contradiction, and this is the problem that most people have, is that they try to do meditation and they can't still their mind. Okay, and they'll just 6-7 hours of okay, and then they finally give up on it and they go, you know what, you got to be like a Zen Buddhist or something, because they're the ones to spend their life devoted to this. Okay, and bravo, I mean, that's a lot. Okay, but you don't have to make it that difficult. Okay, if the mind cannot be still, then how are you going to access the stillness if your mind cannot be still? What's the secret there?
You have to go beyond the mind.
Okay. Remember what I just told you? Everything's a clue. Everything's got a riddle to it. If everything is the opposite of what you're being told, then is the stillness truly still? The answer is no.
No.
And how do you know that? Because even if you wanted to try to quantify that, just go into astrophysics and look at what scientists are learning about the free energy and about what's at the stillness, or the still point, they call it, of the black holes. Okay? Okay, in the center of the black holes, there's this thing called the still point. And when scientists have at least speculated what it looks like in there, it is total chaos. Harmonic chaos, but chaos. Inside what is basically the size of a little pea has the energy of creation that can create universes. Do you believe that would be still? No. That is full of insane energy of creation. Oh, and by the way, creation, what's the key ingredient for creation? What do you need to create? Feel into this like a little kid.
Imagination.
Bingo. Okay? How can you imagine if your mind is still? Okay? You have to look at the opposite of what you're being shown in order to see the truth. Once you do that, then it makes complete sense why imagination is so important that in this game that we created, we made it so that we would believe that imagination was worthless. Another contrasting thought, because the game will tell you it's worthless, but if you looked at the opposite of it and say it is actually worth it, because it's needed for creation, and every brilliant person that has ever created anything in this 3D world, Einstein, Tesla, and everybody else in between, will tell you that imagination, if they had one thing that they could pick, and you actually can search this out, Einstein that said if he had one thing he could pick out, The one thing that he would not leave out of anything that he was doing in his research, everything he did was, and this was later on in his life when he got out of just 3D and really started to feel into the consciousness of the universe. He said, imagination. He said, you take that away and you can't create. Well, that's a pretty big contrast to the way the world has taught us to accept imagination. Okay, when you're maybe a little kid, leave it behind once you get to be about 10, 11, 12 years old, because the world is going to kick your booty if you're only doing imagination. You're not there. You're not with it. Get back into the program, they will say. Ooh, into the program. Right? It's all over the place, man. I mean, that's how you got to look at a lot of this stuff. I'll give you another example. I mean, I can go on forever, but I'll give you a real quick example. The netters in Egypt. Most of the netters in Egypt were considered to be high priests. In actuality, most of the netters were high priestesses. And that the ancient Egyptians knew about the power of the divine feminine, and the best to know how to harness that energy were the priestesses. But they were not, in history, viewed most of the time as the highest of the highest. It was the men. Contrasting. Okay, the women were the ones that created pretty much all of the mystical energies that you now can equate to ancient Egypt, or for that matter, Samaria and all these other places around the world. It was women. Okay, so you want it? We can, like I said, we can go on forever and ever and ever. But if you look at this that way, then all of a sudden things make sense. Things make sense. They start to make sense. And then you can start pulling the pieces of the puzzle together to get a clear picture of how you're supposed to interact with this game. This is the kind of stuff, getting back to your first question, if you're just sitting going, yeah, I made it. All right, give it to me. Give me whatever it is. I'm in 5D energy now. You're not doing anything about it, ain't going to happen. Sorry, ain't going to happen. You've got to be a part of the game, because there's a thing called the law of entanglement. Whatever you do, I am benefiting from it. Whatever I do, you're benefiting from it. And if you're sitting on the couch scratching your belly and having some beer or something and waiting for everybody else to do it, I ain't getting anything from you. Sorry, you're not going to make it into 4 or 5D. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, before we started the conversation, we had a long one off record where you gave me some very powerful messages, to say the least. And I mean, one of those I'll share because I think it applies to everyone. Mm-hmm. Where you really asked me the question, are you going to just stay and report about all this shift, or are you going to create the story and be part of the creation of the new story? Yeah. And 5D, you've said, are creative energies. Yeah. So I would really like, for the rest of this conversation to really go into feeling into those 5D creative energies. Yep. And how we could ride that wave of creation and writing the new story. Because if we don't know what the new story is and we're creating it right now, how can we plant the seeds today in this conversation to really write something that will resonate and that will benefit the whole and the collective? Yeah,
I love that, because Emilio, the things that I talk about, the things that I teach, the things that I get people to see in terms of what is on the other side of that contrast, this is not rocket science, okay? I mean, it could be. You could sit there and really probably put a lot of mathematics into it, but it's not rocket science. What it is faith. And it's not faith in something out there in terms of some godly figure or whatever. It's a faith in yourself. It's a faith and a trust that comes along with it, that you are first and foremost worthy of being that, let's call it very softly, a chosen. Okay, you are here to do something. And when you say that you're not sure what it is, you may not necessarily know what your purpose is. And I always tell people, your purpose here is just to wake up. And they say, well, that just seems like not enough. What did I just tell you? The moment you wake up, the dream ends. Okay? When you wake up, you send a ripple effect all through the various levels of the game that allow others to remember that that's what they're supposed to do. It's a mass awakening for a reason. You're awakening out of the dream and you start to remember. And you don't have to go very deep to understand, well, what would it be like if I am who I am? What would I desire? We do this every day when we're up against all these contrasting, heavy notions of reality. We dream big. We dream of a world that's much different than this one. Okay. And so by virtue of that, we're already creating way beyond 5D worlds that we don't even experience until we leave this place. Okay. But if you can do that there, that same energy can be applied here. So it isn't really, Emilio, that we don't know what this world would look like. We have a pretty good sense of it because it's innate in us. What we don't have a good sense of is whether or not we believe in ourselves to do it. Whether or not we feel worthy enough to do it. And that was a part of the conversation that you and I were talking about beforehand. There's going to be a time where you can sit there and, as I said, report this, report the news, okay? Or be the one that creates the story. We're here to create the story. And the way that you start is very simple. You start to believe in the fact that you are who you really are. Because again, the only time that you're going to get this opportunity to know this is when you die. A lot of near-death experience stories talk about that. We're not here to die. We're here to do it now. It's the dreaming part we're good at. We're really good at. It's the seed of creation. Okay. It's the believing in ourselves that we're not good at. Okay. But you have to take a leap of faith and trust that maybe you're not the crazy one. Maybe the crazy one is everybody else, and you're actually the one that holds the codes to sanity. That's another contrast, right? Because the crazy ones get locked up. The ones who believe in the stuff that you and I are talking about at a much deeper, richer level, they get locked up. They get medicated. Okay? Still happens. Okay? Or they check out because they can't handle reality, because they're not vibing at a reality that everybody tells them that they're broken. Okay? But they're not. They're not the ones broken. It's everybody else that's broken. But they're told that way. I do a lot of talk about autism and other forms of cognitive frequency disorders that are not disorders in the sense of physical disorders. They're distortions of this reality because they don't vibe at this reality. And so they're labeled with something and given medication or treatment for it. So it's not a lack of dreaming. It's a lack of believing, faith in yourself. That's the part that's going to be the most difficult. And the easiest way to deal with that is by simply going into the child energies and just pretending that you are the greatest thing that has ever walked this earth. And that's where people go, well, you can't, it's faking until you make it. A child never fakes it. They actually believe it. And that's the innocence of that frequency. You can get around a lot of the distortional things that you've been talked about or told about if you just approach it as a child. And that's, again, getting back to imagination, all that other stuff, innocence. So does that make sense? It's not difficult, but you've been told all your life that you're worthless. Okay, for the most part. All right. You decided to make your game really exciting. It was hard enough to just forget who you are. Okay. No, you didn't stop there. You wanted to make it really hard. So you created a narrative where everybody under the sun told you you could not amount to that level of awakening, of enlightenment, because only the privileged few get that. You are the privileged few. You have to remember that and accept it. And that's probably the biggest thing. I have a lot of students who can get into the whole, I am the creator. But when it comes time to show it, when it's time to prove it to themselves, they have a hard time. Many of them do eventually get there, but they have a hard time because they don't believe in themselves. Self-esteem, worthiness, whatever. It's a pretty wild game. It's set up so that, not to make you fail, but so that if you can get through all of this and get to the other side, the worlds that you will create are stupid because you have just gone into the abyss and back.
One of my favorite shows on Netflix now has become Love on the Spectrum, where it follows
Yes.
the love life, romantic life of people diagnosed as on the spectrum or with autism. And I was actually listening to an interview of one of the people from the show. His name is Connor. And when they asked him, what does autism mean to you? He responded with the most insane thing I've ever heard. And I got chills when I heard it. And I would love to just share it with you here, because he responded, autism represents the next stage of human evolution.
Bam.
He said that. He said
Bam.
that.
Bam.
Why do you think he said that? I'm curious.
Because it's true. Because autism in a label form is viewed as a disease or some sort of infliction on the mind, on the brain, okay, on the neural system. Autism is a frequency of consciousness that vibrates at a 5D level. In a lot of the things that I'm doing with AI and stuff that I wrote early on, even that's in my book and in the book that I'm writing now, I talk about that when we have this consciousness evolution, not revolution, but this renaissance of consciousness that is right about to explode, it will be what I call the quiet ones who will lead the way. Now, 15 years ago, when I received that as a transmission, I had no idea what the hell that meant. But it didn't take very long, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, that I started realizing, I started talking about it, I started to write about it, that the quiet ones aren't just these people, but are others that have had and been misinterpreted or diagnosed with mental health conditions, that it was the quiet ones specifically, but not completely, entirely, those with autism, that they're the quiet ones. They cannot speak in this frequency. Okay, they can, and that for other people, they're the ones that have a problem. You've now seen statistically that around the world, autism is rising, and they're talking about it as if it's a plague. It's not. It's rising because autism is a frequency of consciousness that can only be met at the 5D level. When we get to the 5D level, these quiet ones will be the ones waiting for us and showing us the way into the 5D world. They'll be saying, it's about frickin' time. Okay, that's them. I have autistic children and that were clients of mine, or adults who have supposedly on the spectrum, and you do not meet them. You do not meet them at the frequency of 3D. I use a different frequency that I use in sort of the consciousness that I know how to tap into, that is more of a 5D level. And when I do that, we have amazing, amazing experiences together. And they say the same thing, and they talk about things that haven't yet existed yet here, but they will. They will. We're seeing it. Here's again, contrast. They're seeing that as an illness, as a condition, as something wrong, when in actuality, it is the frequency of 5D that they represent. And they will one day not be the silent ones anymore. We will be the silent ones, meaning humanity that doesn't get to 5D. That's why he talks about it. The autistic children already are in 5D. They're waiting for us to get there.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned that you've worked with people with autism that have brought through things that haven't yet existed, do you think there's anything that you could share with us about what are some of those things that exist already in the 5D?
Oh my gosh.
That they're bringing through?
I mean, it's basically a lot of the stuff that I've talked about before, but they already know the genetic coding of not just the human body, but of the genetic coding of the planet, of the universe. Okay, they're all the same thing. It's a very similar genetic coding. We call it genetic and we assume it's just the body, but they know how we're going to go from a two-stranded evolutionary body to a 12-stranded body, and how that's going to reverse all of the diseases that we have had. Disease will not even be a word, okay? We will do things with our body, teleport and transport ourselves all over dimensions once we are able to refine the DNA structure of our body. They know that there will be no need for financial institutions. They know about telepathicness in terms of integration of consciousness into oneness. They know this stuff. They know that this is right on the other side of the veil. we just can't see it right now because the 3D veil is for many people still too thick to look through it. But they know all this. They know about time traveling. They know about dimensional traveling. They know about oh my gosh, aging backwards. They know it all. We won't have a need for food if we don't want to eat it, other than just for pleasure. They know it all. They know about all the various dimensions and all the dimensionals that we talk about, the galactics, and who's responsible for what and what. They know all the technology and the intelligence around it. They know it all already, but they can't speak it because it doesn't translate into 3D yet. It won't ever translate into 3D. There are a lot of families, and I've talked to many of them, they want to change their children. They want to go out and they go around the world to try to reverse the autistic effects of their children. And I tell them, their time is coming. Don't reverse it. You can't even do that. You're going to do more harm than good, because their time is coming. Their time is really coming. And you won't need to do these 3D things to get them to speak. They will be the most intelligent and wise of all of us to be able to show us the way to mathematics that don't even exist right now, to science and free energy and all that doesn't exist, portals, gateways, you name it, all of that. They know it all. They know it. They just can't speak it right now. And that's why I refer to them as the silent ones.
Earlier, you were also mentioning how, we've been fed this lie that, only the select few can reach these levels of awakening and enlightenment. And I also want to highlight maybe another contrast example of what we've also been hearing in the spiritual community, which is the 144,000 are going to be the ones that ascend and whatever. And that just, that's less than 0.001% of the population. So what is your take on the 144,000?
Okay, so I'm going to step it back a little bit on this one, just a little bit, because I have to sort of lay the foundation here a little bit, okay? One other seismic contrast that is also being spoken about this new energy that's in, is that this energy, and we talked about this just before we got on, that this energy is all about the divine feminine, okay? Now I'm going to make the connection to that 144,000 by using this other contrast, because this is a really important message that I want to be able to make sure that I leave people with at this point, because this energy is by far the most important, not the most important, but the most noticeable energy out there right now, okay? But it's only part of a three-part equation. And we talked about this briefly beforehand relative to what is it that, in stepping up, what are you stepping up into, especially if in this particular case you're a male, okay? Now, I've said this before, that it's not that a male has masculine energy and a female has feminine energy, and so they're, that they carry only those codes. They actually carry equal amount of all codes. But in this game, you only are I'm going to say only, initially all you experience is the activation of the codes that are more embodied with the gender that you're in. So divine masculine, mostly in men, although some women who have divine, and there are women who have a much more abundant activated divine masculine, and so they'll feel it too. But then the men who are, so the men get divine masculine, women get activation, get the divine feminine activations, okay? So what does this have to do with 144,000? I'm getting there, okay? But I just got to make this point because it's really, really important, okay? And you and I talked about this, again, big puzzle, the Essenes and the Gnostics and the Knights Templars and all of these amazingly mystical, extraordinary groups of people and stories in the span of human history. They were great mystics, and they knew about this trilogy, this trinity of consciousness, okay? And right now, everybody, the focus is on the divine feminine, and rightfully so. But if you do not have a stabilizing force that can hold all of the energy and help to distribute that energy around the divine feminine, who is the creative powers that are coming in to bring a new order into this planet. If you don't have the being that can hold that energy and help to stabilize it and neutralize it and bring peaceful, harmonic energy around that, you're going to get a whole hell of a lot of chaos. And that's where you get a lot of people who are right now believing that the divine feminine has something to do with suppression and freedom and independence, and take down the masculine kind of energy. Or, as we talked about, there's also going to be this other phenomenon that's going to be coming this way pretty fast, which is the sensuality of the divine feminine, which in the past has always been considered to be a no-no. If you ever see movies and stuff, the temptation of how women will use sensuality to try to lure the man into doing stuff, this is going to be magnified a lot. And if you don't have a balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine and bringing together a stable interpretation of that energy, you're going to have a lot of interesting situations happening, and they're not going to be good. And so you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be running around distorting these energies, even though they believe that they're actually using and applying them in their purest way. But that's the trick, if you will. Not that, I shouldn't say the trick, but that's the nuances of the game. The nuances of the game isn't going to just give you the answers right away. And if you're distorting things, then chances are you're going to get stuck in that loop of distorting sensuality into sexuality. Okay, distorting the divine sovereignty of the divine feminine into a divine power of suppression over the divine masculine, or the distorted masculine. Okay, that's going to create a lot of confusion that will impact that 144,000 number. Okay, this is where it can come back. I really wanted to point out that if you're a male and you're sitting here talking about or hearing all this talk about divine femininity, and you're going, that's great, but I'm really, really not sure how that applies to me just yet now, because I am full of masculine energies, and right now I'm not getting any support here. I'm not getting any real sense of what I'm supposed to do here. Okay, there's a reason why there's so many men. We talked about this before we got online. Disproportionately higher men over the age of 35 are committing suicide. Okay, because they don't have somebody to speak on behalf of the divine masculine, which is an energy that you and I were talking about in the grid work that I'm doing right now, is coming in waves now. Just like the divine feminine was coming in waves, there's a divine masculine energy that's coming in waves, because when you put those two together, they create a child energy, which is, as I've told you before, the most powerful, omnipresent energy of God possible. Okay, that's the Trinity, the Gnostics and others were talking about, that they never really shared with everybody, because that's like a big secret, and if gotten into the wrong hands, which it was tried to for thousands of years, a lot of people died for that, to keep that secret. Okay, a lot. You don't have to go into history too much to know that tens, hundreds of thousands of early, what we would call Christians or the way showers, were murdered to hold on to that secret until now, until the coming of this energy now. So the 144,000, bringing it all back together, is this understanding that we're not talking about 144,000 people. Okay, I want to stress this. People always will have a comment about something that I'll say about this, and they still don't get what I'm trying to say. It is not 144,000 people. It is 144,000 beings. And a being, and we've talked about this a little bit in other interviews, we are divine beings that are playing in this game in different roles. Meaning that the being that you are as Emilio is very likely playing in 10,000 other roles in 10,000 other games. Now, if you did that and you multiply 10,000 by 144,000, you will get a pretty sizable number, meaning that a very large chunk of people would actually, people represented by beings, or beings represented by people, that will actually advance. Or
just one really quick question there. Why am I only aware of this one at this time if the higher being is experiencing multiple different realities?
Dude, that would be like I actually teach an entire 2 courses on that question. Okay. It is all, I'm going to sum it up as easily as I could. Okay. At this level of awareness, you are only aware of the primary game that you're playing in right now. The reason why it's important for you to let your guards down and imagine yourself to be the divine is because when you do that, you will access a higher level of awareness that will allow you to see a higher level of the picture, which will allow you to know more about the lives that you are living in right now. That will become clearer to you when you get to the closer to 5D, when in 5D is not only creation energies, but it's called integration energies, because that's when we roll ourselves back into oneness again. And in that point, and I'm telling you, that is mind-blowing stuff. That's when you will see all the lives that you have been playing in as the divine being. So you're not designed to see other lives, other than if you're sleeping, okay? But you're not designed to see other lives because, dude, let's face it, you can barely handle the one that you're in right now. All right? All right?
With one broken rib out here.
Yeah.
Like,
why am I not able to see the... Because you can't even stop yourself from breaking your rib. All right? Okay? So forget about showing you the other lives. You would go nuts. You just would not get it. I have experienced integration at that level, and honestly, with no joke in this at all, it is so mind twisting when you start to actually experience integration into oneness that your mind will literally have a moment where it just flips out. It cannot compute what it just happened. That's why it's at 5D and not at 3D. You can, as they would say, that the famous, for those people who know any movies, A Few Good Men, when Jack Nicholson says, you can't handle the truth. Okay. You can't handle the truth. All right. That part you just cannot handle right now. Just deal with the one you got right now. Cause brother, that's enough for you right now. You will have more time to feel into the other ones.
Beautiful. And I'm aware that I kind of cut you off there. So if you were finishing the idea on the 144,000.
No, that's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, you got to stop looking at this whole phenomenon of what's happening in 3D filters. That's why we spend a considerable amount of time helping you to feel comfortable with the idea that maybe, just maybe, this contrasting notion that you're nothing and that you're in the contrast of it, that you're everything, then maybe you can grab onto that just enough to ride that frequency, because if you can ride that frequency, you're going to see things, experience things, know things that you would not know, see, or feel in 3D. You have to let go of the limited views that you have right now, beginning with that you don't know anything, okay? That you have to look elsewhere for answers in the sky somewhere. All the answers truly are in you if you just believe that you are, just give yourself a freaking chance to believe that you are the divine intelligence, you are God, you are source, you are creator. And you will be amazed at how things will start to pop into place, because the energies around you now, those same 5D energies that you want access into, will respond to that. Remember, law of resonance. You cannot be down here believing you're nothing, and up here you're supposed to be believing or knowing yourself as everything. Ain't gonna work. Okay? You got to do it, and you got to at least pretend that you are. Let that balloon rise. It's really stupidly simple, but stupidly hard, because we like to be stupidly complicated. Okay? That's my science right there. That's my whole terminology, stupid. Okay? That's it.
Wow. Beautiful. We've covered a lot, and I'm aware that, a lot of these different things that we talked about could be episodes on their own.
Yes.
So,
yes. So we'll have to continue this discussion, hopefully not every 6 months, but we'll have to continue this discussion again, because what we've talked about, Emilio, off camera, is that there is no more time here. I really want to get back. I really want to get back to that point to everybody, not just to you before this camera. I said, are you going to sit here and report on history? Are you going to be sitting here reporting on the stories, or are you going to be the creator of those stories? And that's not just you, but there are many are listening to this, and they know they are here to be the creators of those stories. You're not here to report the story. And we don't have that much time to get things going, because as most people that you interview are saying, it's time. Let's go. It is time. There's no more rehearsal. We got to get this thing going. Everybody who really feels like they're supposed to be doing something, start to believe it at the very least, because you're not here to sit in the sidelines.
Yeah.
Right.
Every episode we do, it seems like you get more and more fired up and your hair gets longer. So I don't know if there's a correlation there.
I feel like there is, man. I feel
more
like
flow, more fire.
I feel like I just grew about an inch of my hair just in this conversation. So we'll see where it is. I might actually trip over my hair pretty soon. So, all right, brother. So thank you for having me on. But I believe very strongly that this will resonate with a lot of people. It's time, people. It's time.
Yeah.
And everybody's involved in this.
Yeah. We do have a segment that we call the Final Trio, little personalized questions that we ask at the end of every show. Before that, where would you send people to connect with you, with your work, with the community that you're building, and all the beautiful teachings that you're offering to the world?
Thank you. The best way, I've got a community of people that are soul family people, if you want to call it that, like-minded people, really desire to see the world and themselves differently. That's playground.francoromero.com. Just check it out. Nobody's going to be reaching out to you unless you reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to participate in the community. Participating could just be observing, or it could be posting, it could be playing in some of the activities that we're doing in there. This will eventually roll into the AI experience that I'm working on right now, which will be absolutely mind-blowing for people. But we'll talk about that some other time soon, because that's happening. But so playground.francoromero.com to see the playground experience, see what people are talking about, how you might want to playfully be participating in that. And then if they want to know more about the courses and stuff, you can do it in the playground, but you can also find it more easily at francoromero.com, and it talks about all the courses there for people to access the way of the inner child, this remembrance, this easy, simple remembrance that you are the divinity here to remember itself at this time in your life. And it's a pretty exciting, mystically beautiful experience to go through that course. So thank you. That's the best two ways to reach out to me.
Yeah, and we'll include that all in the show notes in the description below, so people can go directly and connect with you. And for the Final Trio, it's really interesting because the last thing that we were talking about really ties closely to this question, and I didn't even know we were going to go there. So
okay.
The question is, what part of your multidimensional self are you still remembering?
What part that I'm still remembering? That's a really cool question. It's not so much remembering as it is accepting. Okay, because even though I say you have to accept, you get higher and higher and higher and higher into the levels of consciousness, and it still causes you to pause and go, I'm not sure if I should say this, but shit, how much more can it be? And it's just that amazing. So I would say the purest essence of what I know myself to be as an ancient intelligence is the part that I am just now stepping into. And remembering. And that's the part that I was telling you that has taken me all over the world, doing some amazing things and experiencing things that are just mind-boggling and almost unexplainable, because I've allowed myself to start remembering the most profound wisdom and intelligence of being an ancient energy of source, of the source aspect that I am. So that's the big one. That's still the one. It's like, like with everything, like karate, it's like the 10th belt, the 10th strand on the black belt. I'm still remembering those pieces, and damn, it is really amazingly abstract. For instance, the idea that we know ourselves to be bodies is a very abstract concept in that highest levels, because at that highest levels, we're not just light. We're sounds, we're frequencies, we're almost music, we're colors, we're flavors. That's what we are. We don't have bodies. We can have existence in bodies or avatars, but we are that extremely there, that you're everything, that you're literally everything. And that's the part that I'm still remembering. And when I do it, it blows my circuits out.
Beautiful. What becomes possible for the collective when one person steps fully into their authenticity? Is it too I don't know how I come up with these.
Yeah, really. What is it?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm going to just ask, are you on anything? Because I'd like to know what you're on, because I like to get there. Okay?
I'm on cacao. I'm on cacao.
Okay. Well, I know I'm being Colombian. That's a fair question to ask, because I know people ask me all the time since I'm Colombian. What are you on, man? But what is possible? Everything is possible. I mean, I'm not lying when I say that this is the... Emilio, why do you ask these questions at the end? Okay, because I've said this in every which way already. The idea is that when one person, the whole idea is that if one person reaches the top of this pinnacle of this game of awareness, it collapses all of the other games around it, meaning that everyone begins a rapid acceleration of remembering and their games end. Okay. And that's when you get the unification of oneness. So it's a brilliant question to ask, because the whole purpose of this, the whole purpose why I go out and talk about this, is because I'm not just there trying to share everything I know. I'm there to raise the consciousness level of everything so that everybody contributes in their own way to the full picture of the game, so that one of us, me or somebody else, gets to the damn top of the mountain. Okay? Because once that happens, when that one being gets to the top, everyone else, because everyone else is part of the same fabric, will remember. Game over. That's what it means when one person can reach it. Everybody reaches it.
Intuitively, the next question that I had was, what do you think the final boss level of this game looks like for most people right now?
Boss level?
Like the Bowser level in a Mario game, like the last level.
Okay, I get you. What does it look like? Heaven, like on earth, which is what's been talked about in various ways by various civilizations over thousands of years. What is it going to look like? Is freaking heaven on earth. Utopia, not dystopia. Everything you could possibly imagine in every Hollywood movie, roll them up into it all and add about 1,000 different versions of that. And you will experience heaven. What people, when they die, interimly, while they're waiting to come back into another life, talk about that utopic experience of having everything that you ever dreamed of, and everyone that you ever had and loved there. That's what it's going to look like here. That's what the expression heaven on earth is. Not just an expression. It is an actual statement of what is to come. Did that help?
A lot. And I actually had a bonus one. This is
a really bonus question?
A bonus question. Only for you, Franco.
All right. What is it? What's going on?
What do you think is the most important question that humanity still has not asked itself?
Why me? It has to ask itself, but it hasn't been willing to answer it. Why me? And the answer is, why not? That's it.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. You can exhale now. Wow, that was a lot. Thank you, brother. These are always quantum leaps in my understanding, and I know for people as well that are tuning in, and they can feel the acceleration just through the energies that you're transmitting. I feel the acceleration of this shift. So thank you for taking us there and leading the way as well, and such an honor to be able to share this space with you, brother. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, brother. I have just nothing more than praise for what you're doing, and being able to be a part of it is fun. And I'm, like I said off camera, looking forward to some exciting things that you and I will be doing in the future together. So it's just the beginning. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Till next time.
All right.